Hi, this is a conversation in progress. I'm Ed Kaine, and what I'm going to talk to you about today, this is our second video talking about the political alignment graph. This idea already that we have the far left and the far right, and that we are bringing that together in terms of economic freedoms, and then we add this vertical component, which is the social freedom scale, which goes from anarchy at the top down to authoritarianism. That is basically set up so that you can quickly take any policy and try to figure out where it fits in terms of, are there more economic freedoms here for individuals, or is there less regulation or more regulation, or is there more ownership by the government? Things like that, where you want to figure out where that fits. But also, where does it do anything to our social freedoms? Is it more anarchic, or is it more authoritarian? Is it more trying to control us, or is it more allowing things that could harm us? Think about that. This is what we're talking about. It's called the political alignment graph. It's a conversation in progress with Ed Kaine. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks. Okay, we're back here. Now we're talking about the social freedoms on the political alignment graph. Again, this is a graph that I designed and published in Nation of Change in 2012, basically to kind of separate this idea of economic freedoms, where we go from no regulation or private ownership of everything, all the way to public ownership of the means of production and distribution. But that was the economic scale. That's our left to right. Check out that video if you're wondering where I fit on this, and where I think the Democratic Party and maybe the conservative parties, the Republican Party, fits. So now let's talk about social freedoms. So if we were to think about a full freedom, right? Anarchy is the freedom to do whatever socially you want to do. And then down here would be authoritarianism. Okay, so if you want to have true freedom to do whatever you want, you don't necessarily want an authoritarian, someone who's going to try to control what you think, do, and say. Nor do you want an anarchy necessarily, where you are the limits of your the rights of my fist, and far before the rights of your nose, for instance, right? So this is down here. This is full Mad Max, right? So you remember Mad Max? The world had fallen apart, and basically the most ruthless folks controlled everything. And down here, where you've got an effort to try to control what you think, do, and say on a regular basis. So if your party is more interested in that. So for me, I feel that a physical threat is unacceptable. No, you shouldn't physically threaten people, right? But some domain of social freedoms to do that must exist, right? So nobody wants full Mad Max. I mean, that's the whole point of the movie, right? I mean, you're not looking for the world to completely break down, but a complete breakdown might lead to a situation like that. A complete breakdown the other way where we have an authoritarian, someone who wants to control basically how you feel about the freedoms of others. Okay, so authoritarianism, after thinking about anarchy, authoritarianism, controlling what you think, do, and say. Your religion is your religion. Your religion may have tenets that you should not do many things. We can have laws that agree, for instance, that thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. But in terms of the other things that a religion might suggest, you have to decide as a society whether you want to do that, right? You want, for instance, to pledge. The Pledge of Allegiance has been added in the last 70 years or so. That is one nation under God. Well, you might not agree that you believe there's a God. It's fine, right? If you don't agree with that, and someone says, no, you have to believe that, That's authoritarianism, where someone's controlling what you think, do, and say. So that's freedom of religion. True freedom of a religion has to be somewhere, around here. You got to be able to have your whatever your choice of who you want to follow, what you want to follow, how you want to do that aspect of your life, right? If someone wants to tell me that their religion says you can't do anything, like say same-sex marriage, we talked about in another video. Imagine your religion says you can't do that, or maybe your religion doesn't really, but maybe someone in your religion, someone who's an authority in your religion, is telling you that you have to believe this thing. What about the so we keep talking about the rights of women and the unborn also, right? So a child being brought into the world is like that's an ultimate authoritarian move, right? You have to do this. You brought this upon yourself as a kind of a punishment, almost. That control over the person, the personhood of the unborn. Obviously that person could go on to great things. They could, if they were viable, but they can't be viable without participation of the people involved, right? So, is it ideal? It's just something that exists. If I'm going to control your social freedoms at all, I'm going to control them religiously. I'm going to control them just through violence. This is another idea, right? So I don't believe in violence. I don't believe we should be doing this. I mean, I think that people shouldn't be threatening each other. They shouldn't be doing these things because that interferes with their rights to just be autonomous individuals. But once in a while, people will be physically threatened because they don't believe something another person says, right? So think about that in terms of where these are, right? So now we've talked about, in the other video, we talked about economic freedoms, right? If you were to think about who is where, I don't want this violence, so we want a safe society, right? I don't want to tell you what to believe, who to worship, whatever you want to do there. I mean, we can argue against the ideas if the ideas are bad. Sure, that doesn't make it authoritarianism. To tell you that we disagree is fine. It's just a discussion. So ideas aren't protected. You come up and you defend your ideas. You share your ideas. You defend your ideas. Why not, right? So, but if I take my ideas and say, my deity tells me that you have to do this. Well, sorry, you don't get to tell, your deity doesn't get to tell me what to do. Unless that deity maybe shows up and uses its authoritarian control to make me do it, right? So if you were to think about where the Republican Party fits in this model, they are much more in the authoritarian domain. I'm not saying that they're going to force you to do anything. Well, yeah, of course they are. They're going to use their power to stop you from exercising rights over your own body, what religion you follow, whether you want something, to be part of the Pledge of Allegiance. All that stuff is more authoritarian, right? But if you were, say, a libertarian, you might want very little no regulation on this. But also, I think it should be fine if I should crank my music up to whatever. I should just shoot my guns wherever. Who cares, right? A little bit of anarchy. So if you're a libertarian, you might find yourself in this zone here. But most people don't want Mad Max. I wouldn't be suggesting that. But maybe somebody does, right? It's partly where you are. If you hope the world degrades into a Mad Max situation, please note it in the comments. But otherwise, this Democratic Party has been pretty much on social freedoms. You should be free to believe what you want, and also people should not impinge on other people's rights. So as many social freedoms as you can have, right? Thinking about where we want to set our bar, at least when we're talking about the pendulum now, we want the pendulum to be shifting fairly between economic freedoms, where there's less and less regulation out here and more ownership over here. Yeah, we can have a pendulum there where we decide what we want to do with that. And we have a pendulum also, pendulums work this way, but pendulums of more anarchic thoughts and more authoritarian thoughts. But that it's fairly simple. More freedom for more people is a really good idea. So if you kind of consider what your, when something's proposed and you say, something I can kind of consistently go for is Republicans. What social freedom do they want to take from me now? What economic freedom do they want to take from me as a normal person, as a person who, I don't have billions of dollars, I don't have millions of dollars. I can't compete against this, right? If there was no regulation on private industry, they could just flood and control every aspect of our lives. So that's why when we break this apart, there's a lot of nuance in why the political alignment graph is just a way to kind of frame something so we can discuss where we're going. If someone is telling you that they're far left, they might just not know what the left is. There are very few Soviet-style communists. Now, we were talking about the social freedoms. So if you have the means of production and distribution, one big risk is that some people might not like that. They might not like that they can't run their own shop and do their own thing the way that they want to. So often we hear that any kind of like public hospitals, that would be, forcing doctors to do surgeries when they don't want to. It's like, no. Soviet-style communism was essentially a very authoritarian control with this means of production and distribution controlled by the state. So when it fell apart, it's partly because these freedoms that have been denied to people so long, so that they could have religious freedom of who they want to marry, freedom that way. People are all excited to just get back to this and not be so authoritarian, so that the government wasn't controlling it. Now, you can discuss that, whether you think that Vladimir Putin has really gone very far from this authoritarianism. Their elections are kind of sketchy, right? But if you control it, so instead they went far to this side and they got control of the media, and they made sure this propaganda could keep rolling there. So no regulation of the propaganda, or where are they on the scale, right? So it's up for grabs, right? Where do some of these places, where do some of these policies fit on this scale? So now, why is this useful? You can quickly lay out something like an education policy where you say, okay, well, is that more regulation of education, or is that less? Is that more public ownership of education? Is that more an anarchic way of dealing with that subject, or is that more of an authoritarian? Or are we respecting social freedoms and trying to get more freedoms to more people? If you're able to get out there and exercise your economic freedoms, that's awesome. You are not going to be able to compete against a billionaire if they want your business. They just buy you out, which might not be bad. But if you just want to be a worker and you want the regulation enough so that there is a minimum wage, right? You want to be able to afford to live. You want a safe working environment, right? All those things are on the economic scale. We want to make sure everything's safe versus this. So take your policy, plug into this, check it out. If you want a copy of that graph, I'm going to try to get a link down there in the description for you to grab that. And anyways, enjoy it. Thank you so much for being a part of this. This is a conversation in progress. I'm Ed Kaine. Be sure to like and subscribe, make a comment. That really helps a lot to share these ideas out into the world. This is an important time. All right, thank you so much.